This video is sponsored by Skillshare. I just was sucked into this book. Oh my goodness. Whoa, mind blown. I was just mesmerized by this book. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So in this video I am finally going to be talking about all of my all-time favorite books, because throughout like all of the videos that I make in vlogs or whatever, I always say like, oh, I absolutely love this book, but I don't think I've ever made a video of just my list of favorite books of all time and books that I will constantly like either go back to or just suddenly think about randomly throughout the day. So I made a little list of all of my favorite books and books that I just highly recommend, that I think are very special, and definitely grab yourself a pen and pencil to write down all of my book recommendations, because I'm telling you, these are good. This isn't in any particular order because I don't really feel like I can pick an all-time favorite book, but these are just phenomenal books. I absolutely love them. Let's get into it. The first one is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This is my only classic on this list, because I'm not a big classics reader, but when I read this book, I thought, oh my goodness, yes, there is finally a classic that I absolutely love. So The Picture of Dorian Gray is about this man called Dorian Gray, and he's very beautiful and young, and he gets his picture drawn or like painted by a good friend of his. But then there is this sort of curse that makes the painting grow older, and Dorian Gray will remain like young forever. And at first he's just like, wow, you know, I get to be young forever. But then shit goes down. It is not something that is normal or healthy. This was quite a dark read, especially the ending just got me like, oh my god, yes. I've only read it once, but I am in desperate need of a reread. So if you're looking for a classic or you want to get into classics, this is a great place to start, because the writing style isn't too difficult. It doesn't feel like one of those very old English classics that are quite difficult to read. This one is so great for you. Highly recommend this. The next one is The Nightingale by Kristen Hannah. This is a book all about the Second World War, and we follow two sisters who, you know, try to survive this war, and both of them have a very different path in life and go through very different things. This was incredibly emotional, and I read this a short time after I visited Auschwitz in Poland, so it hit me like even harder. This was beautiful, sad, emotional. It made me feel so many emotions, and I cried, like I bawled my eyes out. So it's definitely not a happy read, but it is such a beautiful one. I like the writing style was so beautiful and poetic. I just was sucked into this book. If you like historical fiction, definitely pick up this book. Then we have a science fiction series. Obviously, science fiction is one of my favorite genres. It is Sleeping Giants, written by Sylvan Newell. And this is about a woman named Rose. And when she was young, she fell into a big hole into the earth, into a giant metal hand. She was very intrigued by that metal hand. What is it? You know, what does it do? So when she was older, she decided to devote her life to figuring out what that metal hand is and finding actually other metal body parts throughout the world. And this is a story all about, you know, what does this do? Who put it there? And it was amazing. I absolutely loved it. This was a cover buy. I didn't know anything about this book. I saw it in the bookstore. I was just like, this cover is phenomenal. It has sparkles. Yes. I fell in love with this book series. I think this may be one of my favorite science fiction book series. So if you like science fiction and amazing characters as well, she's called Dr. Rose Franklin, and I'm pretty sure that she's inspired by Rosalind Franklin, who is a very famous scientist. Quick interruption and different angle, because I am so excited to announce that this video is being sponsored by Skillshare. If you don't know Skillshare, Skillshare is an amazing online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creators. You can explore new skills or like get totally lost into all the creativity that you can find on Skillshare in classes such as illustration, photography, videography, also classes about motivation and lifestyle. There's just so much to choose from and so many interesting things to learn. A class that I am super interested in is called Lettering for Self-Expression. This class is taught by Ade Hogue, and he is an illustrator and art director, and he's talking about the importance of hand lettering and how you can create these amazing hand lettering artworks to really express who you are and express your creativity. So I'm really interested to follow that class, because I'm not very good at hand lettering, but it always just looks so beautiful, so I wish that I can do it myself, so I'm definitely going to follow that class. One of my favorite things about Skillshare is that it is completely curated on learning, so there are no ads in between the videos, and you can just binge the entire class if you want to. They're also always launching new premium classes, so you will always be able to explore your creativity and see what new passions or skills you can find. If you're thinking, oh my goodness, I want to try a Skillshare, I have some amazing news for you, because the first 1,000 people who click the link in my description can get 1 month of Skillshare Premium for free, so you can just start exploring your creativity and follow all the classes that you want. So let's get creative, and also let's get back to all of my favorite books of all time. Of course, I have to mention The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. This book series will always just have such a big place in my heart. I grew up with The Hunger Games, mostly with the films first. Yes, oops, I saw the films first, but still. This is honestly, in my eyes, a perfect YA dystopian series. I love it. Need I say more? Ew, I see a little insect on my wall. I have to get rid of this. Ew. Okay. This is just brilliant, and I will just forever talk about this book, because every time I reread it, I just come across something new, like new details, and I fall in love with it even more. This is definitely my favorite YA series ever. Let's talk about a non-fiction book. Non-fiction is actually one of my favorite book series. I love learning just new things about the world and about space and the universe. And this one is a very great one. It is Stephen Hawking's Brief Answers to the Big Questions. And in this book, this was his last book that he ever wrote. It is all about these big questions like, is there a God? How did it all begin? Can we predict the future? What is inside a black hole? And just using his knowledge of all of the scientific things that he, did throughout his life and all of the discoveries he's made, he's trying to answer these big questions. Everything in this book is so interesting. I flew through it, and I just wish that he had more time to, write more and discover more. And it is so sad that he passed away a couple of years ago, but this book is definitely something great that he wrote, and I'm very grateful for it because it was so interesting. I really have to reread it, because I have to say I think I forgot quite a bit from this book, but still absolutely love it. If you like non-fiction, and if you like science, and if you like the universe, this is definitely the book for you. Then we have, of course, Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So this is all about Daisy Jones and the Six, who are a band from the 70s. If you know me and if you watch my channel for a while, you may know that one of my favorite decades are like the 60s and 70s. I think the music, the outfits, the lifestyle is just so interesting, and I love the whole aesthetic and the vibe. So when I found out that this book was a thing and that this is about a girl in a band from the 70s, I was just like, heck yeah. I listened to it on audiobook, fell in love with it, listened to it within one day, then I reread it and still absolutely love it. I love this book. The thing that I love so much about Taylor Jenkins Reid is that the characters that she writes feel so real. It feels like this is an actual band that, were a thing during the 70s, and this is all about how this band broke up. And this book is written in the form of an interview. So all of the band members, as well as Daisy, they talk about, what happened, why did they split. They are actually making a TV show about this book. I can't freaking wait. I'm sorry if sometimes it's a bit more sunny and bright, because the weather, I don't know what it's doing. Once it is sunny, then it is cloudy. I'm sorry, I can't control the weather. Next we have another non-fiction book, namely Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. This book opened my eyes and just made me go oh my goodness, whoa, mind blown. This is written by Yuval Noah Harari, and it is basically a brief history of humankind. Well, it's quite big. I actually listened to it on audiobook, which was great, but I do really want to reread it because there are illustrated photos in here as well. And this is basically all about humankind, how they started, what they thought, the things that they were able to do, the things that they were willing to do for to get power, to... I can't tell you anything. You just have to read it. It was so interesting. If I have a few chapters, it's about the cognitive revolution, about the agricultural revolution, the unification of humankind, the scientific revolution. It is so interesting. There is so much information in this book, so definitely take your time with it. There is also a sequel called Homo Deus, which is all about the for the future, what could potentially happen. And I actually got the third book in the series as well, which is 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. I know for sure that even if you don't really like non-fiction, this will blow your mind. Forever a favorite of mine. I absolutely loved it. Let's talk about another one that is just The Lord of the Rings by J.R. Tolkien. This will forever just be a classic, obviously. I already grew up with like watching the Lord of the Rings films. I still remember the first time I watched a Lord of the Rings film and I was just like completely mesmerized. Like, what is this magical world? This is amazing. I've watched the films countless of times. I've only read the book series once, but once I was like into the book series, I flew through it. I actually read the first book, The Fellowship of the Ring, this one in a couple of days, not this edition actually, but another edition. I read it whilst I was in New Zealand. I was traveling through New Zealand, the land of the Lord of the Rings. I went to Hobbiton, which was just one of the best days of my life. And then I was in this hostel where they had this bookshelf, you know, where you could just put books and then pick a book or whatever. And I saw The Fellowship of the Ring. And I thought, this is the time to finally read it, because I tried reading it a couple of years before that and I couldn't really get into it because it is quite slow. But then I saw this book and I thought, oh my god, this is meant to be. I am in freaking New Zealand. I picked up the book and I read it in like 3 days. Yes, I love this book series. This is probably my favorite like high fantasy story of all time. And Aragorn is my favorite character. I love Aragorn. If you've never read or watched The Lord of the Rings, please do so. It's just phenomenal. Next up we have a very different book, and I thought about, will I put this in my favorites? And then I thought, yes, I actually want to, because I enjoyed it so very much. It is called Einstein's Dreams, written by Alan Lightman. This is a very short book, and every chapter in this book is like a couple of pages long. The premise just sounded so interesting, and I'm so happy I picked it up because it was brilliant. This is like a fictional collage of things that Einstein may have thought about whilst he was, or like may have dreamt about whilst he was creating his theory of relativity. And all of these chapters are about different ways that time can tick. So maybe in one world time goes backwards, or in one world time is like circular. It is very, like, the fact that this writer could discover so many, or like come up with so many different ways that time can tick is very interesting. And at first I thought, how will I be able to get into a chapter or like into a story, because they're basically all short stories, if a chapter is only a couple of pages long. But even within one page, you're already feeling for these characters. So the way that the writer wrote this book and made me feel for characters, only if I've read about it for one page, is just absolutely brilliant. And that is why I think this was such a good book, because a 3 or 4 page chapter slash short story made me feel something. This is just an incredibly unique book, very short. So please, if you just want to read something different or something else, pick up this book. Next, we have one that is very sort of special to me because I've never felt this many emotions whilst reading a book. It is A Little Life by Hanya Nagahara. I won't say to you, oh my god, you have to read this book, because this is not just a book. This is an entire painful journey with these characters. If you plan on, like, if you want to read this book, please read the trigger warnings. Please, like, prepare yourself for this book, because it is not a light read. The writer created these characters and they went through so much in their lives. It is basically about 4 college classmates who moved to New York City, and you follow their lives. I don't even know if it's like a favorite, but this is just one of those books that made me feel so many emotions. And the fact that a writer can do this to a person reading letters on a page is, I think, phenomenal. Think about it before you want to read this book. It was a journey, but this is definitely something that I admire about certain books, that they can make you feel so many emotions. We have a couple more books to talk about. Of course, I have to mention The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I have talked about this book so often on my channel, and if you don't know The Night Circus, this is about the Night Circus, which is this like magical circus that appears at night without like any prior knowledge, and there are people who follow this circus around the world. It's a very mysterious and cool like circus. And then one of the main plot lines in this book is that you follow 2 magicians who have this sort of competition with each other. The last time I read this book was in 2016, so I have to reread this very soon, but I just know that I will absolutely love it. The first time I read it, I was very much focused on just the story itself, but it takes place in 2 different time periods. So the second time I read it, I really tried to pay more attention to exactly how old all of the characters were, and I even enjoyed it more. It took me longer to read the second time around, but I appreciated the story so much more the second time. It is very whimsical and beautiful and just magical, and I love this book. I think I have like 4 or 5 copies of The Night Circus. And by the way, Einstein's Dreams was recommended by Erin Morgenson on her Twitter account. So thank you, Erin Morgenson, because I found another favorite because of you. Not only your own book, but also another one. So yeah, I love The Night Circus. I also wish that they would make a film or something about The Night Circus one day. That would be so cool. Okay, 2 more books. The next one is Just Kids by Patti Smith. I've talked about this book so often in the past couple of weeks on my channel. Patti Smith is a singer, songwriter, artist, a creator, and this is a non-fiction book all about her life when she went to New York City, when she was like a late teenager, early young adult. And she just went there without any money, all by herself, and she met Robert Mapplethorpe, who was the famous photographer. And this is basically like a diary all about her life, the people she met in New York City, the things she did, the experiences. I was just mesmerized by this book. This takes place in like the 70s, so this was obviously already something that really interested me. But the people in here was so interesting as well, and I just loved reading about her life. It was amazing. I also really loved the writing style. It felt very poetic, and I just absolutely loved it. I know that I will reread this countless times because it was also like, it's quite short. I love that there are also a lot of photos in here. Also in the back you have some photos, like Polaroid photos. Absolutely loved this book. And even if you don't know much about Patti Smith, because before reading this book I just knew that she was a singer, I listened to her albums sometimes, and that was it. I didn't know anything more about her, but now I do, and I think she's absolutely brilliant. Love this. The last book I want to talk about is Before the Coffee Gets Cold. This is written by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. This is a very beautiful little story that takes place in a coffee shop in Japan. And when you go to the coffee shop, people have the ability to go back in time, either to say something to someone that they regret not saying or do something that they regret not doing. At first I thought, is this going to be a bit boring because it just takes place in this little cafe? But I fell completely in love with the writing style, with the fact that this cafe actually felt like a character in itself. I could visualize this cafe right in front of me, like I was there with these characters, and it was so beautiful. It's like magical realism. It was so beautiful and so interesting. I'd never read anything like it before. And I also read the sequel, which I loved as well. And I'm definitely going to recommend this to everyone. Like always, this will forever be one of my favorites. I thought it was brilliant. So unique and just so... like the premise is very simple. It just takes place in this little cafe, but the people and like the characters, they make you feel something. And sometimes it's very sad and sometimes it's very beautiful and happy. This is definitely, again, one of those books that I think, thank you for writing this book. This is what books are all about. Okay, so these are all of my favorite books. I do want to give a few honorable mentions as well of a couple of books that I just absolutely love, but I don't think that they were in my favorites per se, but just books that I genuinely really loved reading. I have a lot of them. I have Other Words for Home, which is a middle grade story about a Syrian girl who moves to the US. This is very much about this little girl suddenly living in a very different country with very different people, and how these people react to her living there. It is about racism, but it is also about love and just the beauty of different cultures. This was a very special book. Amazing. Highly recommended. Next we have Nevermore, another middle grade series. This is all very magical, about a girl named Morgan Crow who goes to this like a magical school in the country of Nevermore. Oh my god, so bright. Oh well, I'm just gonna continue. This was magical. This was so lovely. The second book was also amazing. Can't wait to read the third one. Next we have Hold Back the Tide. This is a standalone fantasy book. It's a very short and simple book about mysterious things that are happening in a little town where there's also a big lake. And to me this was a solid fantasy book. There was a cool plot, the characters were very interesting, and the plot twist was really awesome. So if you're looking for a quick standalone fantasy read, highly recommend Hold Back the Tide. Oh my god, this is so bright. I should have done this earlier. Next we have The Midnight Library by Meth Haig. I recently read this like a couple of months ago, and this is about a library that is between life and death. And in this library you have the opportunity to relive your life, but then different versions of your life that could have happened. This is very much about mental health and mental illness and trying to see the beauty in the tiny things in everyday life and really appreciate that beauty. I loved it. I thought it was so beautiful and I cried a lot. Next we have Illuminate. This is a very awesome science fiction book with a lot of illustrations. It is written in the form of like logs or like messages, and it takes place on a spaceship. It is freaking cool. If you like science fiction, I am pretty sure that you will love this book. The whole like format of this book is amazing. I'm pretty sure you will have seen Illuminate around on BookTube, but I just love it. Then we have The Martian by Andy Weir. I normally always put this on my favorites list, but I just haven't read it in such a long time, so I honestly don't know if it's still my favorite. But this is about a man named Mark Watney who goes to Mars on like this Mars mission, and there is a big storm and everyone thinks that he is dead. However, he's still alive, but his friends, like his fellow astronauts, already left with the spaceship because they thought he was dead. But Mark is still alive, so he's going to try to survive on Mars. This book is hilarious, so funny, and also so interesting because they talk a lot about science, which I think is very interesting. But I would have to reread this book to see if I still love it as much, because I've only read it once and I think that's like 5 or 6 years ago. And the last like honorable mention is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, also written by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is about Evelyn Hugo, is this very famous actress, and she talks about her life and the 7 husbands that she had. This book is phenomenal in that all of the characters again feel so real. This actually takes place in the same universe as Daisy Jones and the Six, which is just amazing. And I think Evelyn Hugo is such an amazing, interesting woman. Again, it felt like I was reading about an actual person that actually lived. So good. Taylor Jenkins Reid, her characters are just amazing. Yes! These are all of my favorite books. I loved making this video, and just looking at all of my favorite books, they make me so happy. I really hope you liked it. Let me know in the comments if any of these books on my list are also your favorites, and if not, let me know a couple of your favorite books as well, so I get some new book recommendations. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And if you want to comment something but you don't know what to comment a little stack of books, because we talked about books a lot in this video, so a little stack of books emoji is definitely very fitting. Again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a beautiful day, and I will hopefully see you in my next video. Bye!